Alright, in this video we have a mainframe and we're going to be using TestNG and JUnit to record a functional test against a mainframe screen in hopefully under 10 minutes. Now, when we do this, there's a process that's called modeling. And here I'm going to go ahead and create a new model. And I'm going to call this model CCS. You're going to see that a little bit later. But in this case, we're going to use an IBM 3270 terminal. And it's going to be a 24 by 80. Now, embedded inside of, here's where we would transpose all of our emulator settings. And Verastream comes with a little mock server that will act as a mainframe. So I'm going to connect to that on port 1099. We'll go ahead and connect to this thing. And you'll see that it looks very much like a traditional emulator. There's where I would have put in all my settings. Now, in order to train Verastream how to navigate these screens, this is what we call modeling. And to do it, we basically tell Verastream how to recognize a screen. So I'm on this screen. This is the sign on screen. I'm going to go ahead and label it as such. So I'm going to create this and call it sign on. And then to teach Verastream, we use the concept of patterns. So we're going to lasso this little label up here at the top, and we're going to call that a pattern. We're going to apply this, and now that's how Verastream is going to recognize that it's on the sign-on screen. Now, to get from screen to screen, I need to navigate this application. So it's asking for username and password. So I'm going to just put in B Jones with a password of B Jones. I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the next screen. Now on this screen, I need to give this screen a name. I'm going to call it main menu, just like we have up here at the top. And we'll go ahead and lasso and create a pattern here. And we'll go ahead and apply that. Now you're going to see that Verastream was smart enough to see how I navigated from screen to screen. So when I was on the sign-on screen and I navigated to this new menu screen, Verastream was watching what I did, and it saw that I typed in the B Jones and I hit the enter key. So I'm going to go ahead and approve that logic. So it is proposed to me an operation. Operations are how you get from screen to screen, and it's automatically proposed one called to main menu. And if I approve that, now it will know how to navigate from the sign-on screen to the main menu screen. It will always use that logic when it needs to get from place to place. So in here, I'm going to go to the next screen, which is the customer inquiry screen. So I'm going to type in a 4 here. And then we're going to call this the cust inquire screen. So again, we need to lasso a pattern. We'll go ahead and make that pattern, apply it. Again, Verastream was smart enough to see, okay, you were on the main menu screen, you want to go to the customer inquiry, here's how you do it. I'm proposing this operation. You type the 4 into that cell block and then you hit the enter key. Go ahead and approve that logic. We'll go ahead and do that. While I'm on here, I'm gonna take advantage of creating my first variable. So on here I have an account number, and I'm gonna double click right here, and we call variables attributes. So inside of the attribute here, I'm gonna go ahead and create a new attribute, and I'm gonna call it account num. And we're gonna go ahead and apply that. So in order to navigate to the next screen, which will be the customer profile screen, I'm gonna type in a 2 here. And then I'm going to type in an account number, 167439459. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter screen. Now you can see we popped into a new screen, the account profile screen. So let me name that account profile. And again, we need to lasso a little pattern. I'm going to go ahead and put that pattern inside of here. I'm going to apply that logic. And you can see again, it was smart enough to see how I navigated from screen to screen. It proposed me another operation. I'm going to go ahead and approve that. Now on this screen, I've got 2 variables that I want to take advantage of: this appraised value and the finance type. And these are the values that we're gonna use to test our application. We're going to make sure these 2 values are what we expect. So in order to do that, I need to create them as variables. And so I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to give this guy an attribute name. We're going to call it finance type. All right, we're going to apply that. Then we're going to go here. We're going to click that appraised value, and then we're going to do the same thing here. Apply. All right, and now that we have everything, we need to navigate back to the original menu. So we're going to go right here. We are going to hit the PF13. And it's going to navigate us back, and you can see it was smart enough to see how we got back to this screen, so I'm going to go ahead and approve that. Finally, I'm going to say let's return back to the main menu and give it a path there, so we're going to hit the PF9. It's going to approve that logic. Now we're ready to create our procedure. So we've trained Verastream how to get from all of these different screens. You can see here, if I go to the account profile screen, he can go there, he can get back to the main menu, he can go forward to the customer inquire screen. All right, so the next step in our model is to go ahead and create a procedure test. And the way that we create a procedure is we're going to go right up underneath here the model, and we're going to do these tables, and we're going to create a new table. And this is just an organizational thing. I'm just going to call this a bucket of accounts or whatever. This will be all my account functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And underneath this account, I'm going to go ahead and do a new procedure. All right. And I'm going to call this procedure, I'm going to call it get account. And we're going to go ahead and apply here. And with this procedure editor, we have to pick where we're going to start from an entity perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and start us on the customer inquire screen. And we'll go ahead and say that'll be the beginning point of our procedure. And we'll go ahead and edit the procedure. You can see we're right here on the customer inquire screen. We're going to go ahead and navigate after we, go customer inquire. We're going to navigate to the account profile screen. So we're going to go ahead and do that. You can see we got some on each of these screens. We've got the variables that we defined on that screen. So on this customer inquire screen, we've got an account number variable. We're actually going to use that as what we call a filter. And a filter is an input variable. And then we have our account profile screen. And in here we've got that appraised value and the finance type. We're going to use these as outputs. So we're going to go ahead and map these things, and those will be our output parameters. So once we do this, you can see we've got them right here. And we're going to go ahead and underneath these guys, we're going to pick the data type for these things. And so our account number, let's assume that that's going to be an integer. And then our appraised value, we're going to do that as a float because it's a monetary value. And then finance type was that ARM. We'll leave that as text. So we'll go ahead and apply these. So we've now created a procedure that's called get account. We're going to feed the account number in. It's going to navigate us on the customer inquiry screen, feed in the account number, navigate to the account profile screen, and then pull back the appraised value and the finance type. So we'll go ahead and close that. Now that we're all good, we'll apply that procedure, and now let's go ahead and test it. So let's go over here to our procedure test, and over here in our get account, we're going to plug in that account number 167439459, and we'll go ahead and execute it and test it. And as you can see, we navigated between those screens. You saw Verastream moving through the screens on the back end, and we pulled those values. You can see it's an appraised value and a finance type. So now we are ready to go. So the next step after this, we've got a complete model. We've got a function called get account. It will be fed an account number as an input variable. It will go ahead and navigate us to the account profile screen and grab off these two values. We're going to execute this thing as a functional test. All right, so the next step in our process is we're going to go ahead and deploy this model and get it ready for testing inside of Visual Studio Code or Eclipse. So over here, I go ahead and basically deploy to my local server. You can see that it's gone ahead and deployed, so we're going to go ahead and test it. See, it brings up a little test utility here. You can see that there's a WSDL. We can import this, and we can use the WSDL directly. Or we can use this little web tool right here. Go ahead and put the number in. You can see we get the detail back here. There's our two numbers, our 16 and our arms. All right, so we tested effectively. Now let's compile this thing into a jar. So we go over here into our web builder. And in this case, I already have a project that I've called CCS, but you can see it's a Java bean. We're going to override it. We're going to call it CCS. In here, I can pick the properties about my bean, you know, what kind of connection, what functions do I want to make available, and then any other details, including the Java package name. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay, let's go ahead and build this thing, and then it'll go ahead and build it. Now, after that's complete, we end up with a jar file. So we grab this jar along with a couple other jars that are, you know, specific to Verastream. So we grab 3 jars, and we can document this a little bit later, but we take that CCS jar and these 3 other jars, we stick them into a lib directory, and then we've created 2 templates here, one for JUnit and one for TestNG. These 2 are identical except for a couple key pieces you can see up here. Here are the imports where we import those class paths. So you can see we've added those 4 libraries in here to our class path. So on our JUnit in here, we import that in these statements. Here's our JUnit imports. And then we've got essentially a setup and a teardown function that does our session connection. And then inside of here, you can see we've got validate loan finance type and validate principal amount. You can see these are called in the get account function with this particular number right here. This one's getting the finance type. This one's getting the appraised value. And if you'll notice, these 2 are almost identical with the exception of, you know, the imports. Obviously, this one's doing TestNG and this one is doing JUnit. For all else, these things are exactly the same except one thing here. See how this is 160, and then in JUnit over here, this was 150. And if you remember, we're actually going to be 160 over here. So let's go ahead and start off our testing tools here. We'll go ahead and refresh this thing, and let's go ahead and run these tests. And what I should expect is, obviously, my TestNG ones are the correct values. So you should see those will run correctly. So it's going ahead and running those, right? You can see these are testing correctly. And then now it's testing my JUnits. I expect the first one to pass and the second one to fail. You can see we're running our test down here. When this finishes, we'll bring up the little interface that gives us our report out. You can see that test is completed. Now we're on our little final test. So that one has failed. And then here is our detail, right? You can see that again on our TestNG, both of them passed. On our JUnit one, this second one failed, and that's because we put in a value of 150,000 instead of 160,000. If we go ahead and rerun this thing, you know, let's go ahead and save that JUnit, refresh and rerun. Now we should expect all of them to pass. Now, as you can see, all 4 have passed, and we are completely successful. And that's it. JUnit and TestNG against a mainframe transaction in 10 minutes.